and welcome back to Voyage of a Time Wanderer. Today I am here to share a book haul from my local library book sale. So I recently went to my local library book sale. They run a book sale maybe every 2 months or so, and it started to really be a routine for me to go there and check it out because they have some amazing deals on books and puzzles, so that's very exciting. When I got there this time, I was there right when it opened at 10 o'clock, and there was a big lineup outside, which for the small town I live in is kind of a big deal. There's rarely lineups. And of course, I wasn't able to escape without acquiring some new titles, so I have a little 6-book book haul. I had posted my haul photo on Instagram, and I had some people request that I do a haul video, so that's what I'm here to do today. I got all 6 of these books, as well as looks pretty brand new 1,000-piece puzzle for $10. So I think that's a pretty good deal. Especially considering these books are in amazing condition. My library book sale is kind of neat because it's not just old library books that are for sale. As you can see, actually none of the ones that I got this time are library books. These are just books that people donated to the Friends of the Library Society, and so none of them even have library stickers, so that's pretty amazing. Most of them are $2 a book, but there's a couple in here that were 25 cents a book. Just depending on how recent they are, the condition, that kind of thing. So if you're a book lover who hasn't checked out your local library book sale, you're really missing out because there are some fantastic gems to uncover. So the books that I pick are a mix of nonfiction and historical fiction, and one book that doesn't really fall into either of those categories. So I'll start with a book that's a little bit of a wild card, and that is The Tolkien Companion by J.E.A. Tyler. And as you can see, this is a beautiful old hardback, and when I saw this for $2, I just couldn't pass it up. The reason why it's a little bit of an odd purchase is that I'm not really a Tolkien fan. I have never been able to sit through the Lord of the Rings movies, and I have read The Hobbit, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, and I've never read the rest of the Lord of the Rings books. But I'm someone who really wants to be a Tolkien fan. I desperately want to like these books, and so when I saw this book for $2, I was like, if I ever do become a Tolkien fan, I will kick myself for not having picked this up when I saw it. And I am really hoping to give the main Lord of the Rings books a go sooner rather than later, maybe sometime this summer. I don't want to commit to anything, but I've heard really good things about the audiobooks that are available on Audible, and I feel like in audiobook format it might be a little bit less intimidating. But this is just an absolutely beautiful reference book. It's basically probably made for a time before the internet, but it's just a collection of like all the character names, place names, from Tolkien's works alphabetically. So if you ever are reading a book and forget who someone is or want to know more about them, this would be a book where you could look that up. And there's some beautiful pen and ink style illustrations throughout, particularly the start of each letter has that beautiful illumination kind of style start to it. This book is in amazing condition. There's some examples of elven writing. I just think it looks like it would be a really cool book to have as a reference. I know this is information that I could find on the internet, but it just looks so beautiful to have on my shelf. And if I am ever listening to the audiobooks or reading the books and I wanted to look something up, this would just be a really fun way to do that, with presumably less risk of stumbling across spoilers. Because I've never finished the movies, I don't actually feel like I've really been spoiled. I kind of know the basic plot points, but I don't know everything about what happens at different points. And I feel like it is a book series that is popular enough to be rife with spoilers on the internet, so this is like my a spoiler-free reference book if I ever read the main trilogy. And if you have any tips for getting into Tolkien, I would love to hear those, because like I say, he's someone that so many people that I know love and enjoy, and being a fan of his just seems like so much fun that I want in on the party, but I'm not a big fantasy reader. So like I said, the other books that I got fall into either nonfiction or historical fiction. I'll start with the nonfiction, and the first of the two nonfiction is Passages, Welcome Home to Canada. And this book is a collection of memoir essays by famous authors and public figures who are immigrants to Canada, and it's telling their immigrant story and kind of some of their experiences being new Canadians. So there are 11 Canadians whose stories are included in here, and it looks like a pretty diverse group of Canadians coming from different places in the world, of different social status, people who immigrated at different times in their life, like childhood immigrants who immigrated with their families, adults who came on their own. As many of you know, my husband is a recent immigrant to Canada. He'll have been here 4 years this fall, and so I'm always looking to read more, understand more about the experience of being an immigrant in Canadian society, because that is something that I don't personally have lived experience with. So I love the first line here. It says, "Without departure, there is no arrival." Passage explores what it means to be a foreigner, what it means to be a writer, and what it means to be a Canadian, and what it means to be all three at once. So I think this is going to be a fascinating read. And then the other nonfiction book is Paper Love, Searching for the Girl My Grandfather Left Behind by Sarah Wildman. And this is also kind of a memoir and also a genealogy related book, which, as you all know, is right up my alley. This book is all about a woman who, after her grandfather's death, is trying to learn more about his life in Europe prior to the Second World War, and in particular, who is the woman who was his first love and is in some of the photos that he left behind. So her grandfather had escaped from Austria in 1938, shortly after it was taken over by Hitler, and it sounds like there wasn't a ton of detail shared in her family about his life in Austria and in Europe before his immigration. And after his death, she finds a collection of letters that were written to him that he had saved all these years, and that kind of sets her off on a quest to learn more about her grandfather's life, and in particular, this mystery woman. Obsessed with learning what happened to this woman, Wildman began a quest that lasted years and spanned continents. Along the way, she discovered to her shock an entire world of other people searching for the same woman. In the course of unearthing Valley's ultimate fate, she was forced to re-examine the narrative of her father's triumphant escape and how this history fit within her own life and her generation, and in the process, she rescued a life seemingly lost to history. So this really, really intrigues me. It has all the elements of genealogy-related nonfiction that I love, and I think it'll be really interesting. The only thing I'm kind of sad about is that there are no central photo pages. The photos are interspersed throughout the book, kind of in a smaller format, and I'm a real sucker for those inset glossy photo pages, but I think I will still really, really enjoy this book. I just love books that include old family pictures. Like, what more can you ask for? So that is Paper Love, which is the second nonfiction book that I picked up at the library book sale. So then I have 3 fiction titles, 2 that are historical fiction and 1 that I'm not really sure what genre it is. The first that I'll talk about is Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And this is one of my very, very favorite African literature books, but it's one that I didn't own myself. So I was super excited when I saw this copy for 25 cents. I literally don't know why it was so cheap. It looks like it's in pretty perfect condition. There's no markup. Maybe the cover is a little scruffy here, but like 25 cents? This is a book that I had been looking to add to my collection for a long time because it is one of my favorites. but when I read it for the first time, I read a library copy, and so finding it for such a deal, I couldn't pass it up. This is some historical fiction, African literature. It's set in the 1960s in Nigeria during the Biafran War, and this is one of the books that really made me fall in love with African literature and with Adichie's writing. It's so evocative and beautifully written and poignant. This is a book that I had heard a lot of hype about, and despite absolutely loving it, it was one that I couldn't rush through. I found I really had to take my time with and savor it because I was enjoying it so much, but also it's dealing with so many heavy topics that flying through it just felt like I wasn't doing the story justice. So if you haven't read this book, I would highly recommend it, and I'm really glad to be able to add it to my African literature shelf. The other historical fiction title that I picked up is Brides of New France by Suzanne Desrochers. This is historical fiction about the Filles du Roi, which is kind of a pivotal moment in 17th century Canadian history. In the late 1600s, there were thousands of young women who were sent from France as the daughter of the king, the Filles du Roi, to be brides for the French settlers in Canada. There were lots of young men who had come over as part of the fur trade or were otherwise living in these early colonial settlements, but there wasn't enough French women for them to marry and have families with. So the French government sponsored an immigration scheme for young women to come over and marry these men. Most of the women involved were like orphans or otherwise destitute women who didn't really have any other option, and this was a way to kind of take a chance on a new life and receive some clothes and food as well. So this sounds like it's going to be specifically the story of two young women, Laure Beauséjour and her friend Madeleine, and they are sent across in 1669. The girls know little of their destination, but to be banished to Canada is a punishment worse than death. This haunting first novel explores the challenges that a French girl faces coming into womanhood in a brutal time and place. From the moment she arrives, Laurie is expected to marry and produce children with a brutish French soldier who can barely survive the harsh conditions of his forest cabin. But through her clandestine relationship with Desrochers and allied Iroquois, Laurie discovers the possibilities of this new world. One of my goals this year was to read more Canadian literature, so when I saw this book, which is about a time period that I have studied at school but not really read much fiction about, I thought it might be interesting. And when I looked at the author, Suzanne Desrochers, she wrote her MA thesis on the Filles du Roi, so she definitely has well researched into this time period, and she's in the middle of doing a PhD researching the different immigration experiences of women coming from Paris versus from London to colonial North America. So I think it's going to be a book that's really well rooted in kind of academic research, and so I feel like I'm going to be able to trust the facts in this book. And then the sixth and final book that I picked up at my library book sale is The Book of Air and Shadow by Michael Gruber. And this book, I thought, just based off of the cover with this kind of like antique looking man, I thought when I picked it up was historical fiction. But when I got home and read the back a little bit more, I think it might be a modern day thriller. I'm not entirely sure what genre it is. I think it's going to be one that I'll just have to pick up and see. But the little blurb on the front says, "If you love books, make room for this one on your shelf. Smart, packed with excitement and fascinating details about rare manuscripts and ancient and modern cryptography." And I was like, yeah, I love books and I'm interested in facts about rare manuscripts, so I picked it up, and we will see. The blurb on the back compares it to the Da Vinci Code, and Dan Brown books are kind of one of my guilty reading pleasures, so I have high hopes for this. It says, "A fire destroys a New York City rare bookstore and reveals clues to a treasure worth killing for. A disgraced scholar is found tortured to death, and those pursuing the most valuable literary find in history are about to cross from the harmless mundane into unescapable nightmare." So I think it might be a modern thriller about a historical manuscript getting stolen or something along those lines. Regardless, it sounds really fun. And next time I'm in the mood for a thriller, I will pick this one up. So those are the 6 books that I picked up at my library book sale. I love going to the library book sale because I always find books that weren't on my radar at all, but that I think sound super interesting, and this month was no exception. I'm really excited about all of these books, and I can't wait to pick some of them up soon. So thanks so much for watching, and until next time, enjoy wandering through the pages of a good book. Bye.